We making moves. We making major moves. We making moves. We making major moves. We going all in. Like we got nothing to lose. We making moves. We making major moves.
What is up, everybody? I'm Mr. Man. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back. I have such hot news to bring to you guys today. This is about the great financial crisis going back to 2008, 2009, the birth of Bitcoin. That's where Bitcoin came from. And I have a few different takes on it. I'm going to have Warren Buffett's take on it. Then I'll give you a central banker's take on it. And from that central banking take, we'll now be able to understand the psychology of the central banks and individuals who work at the central banks and how they choose to make act on policy that they need to follow at this point, and the thought for creating certain policies and doing certain things. And this is profound because we are in the collapse of our lifetime right now, and it's going to be terrible. It's going to be terrible for people out there, right? Like, you need to do what you can to get ready for this as best as you can. And like by doing that, you need to have a source of water, you need to have food storage, learn how to, take care of yourself, not rely on the government, not rely on stimulus checks. Because in 2020, when that COVID came around here and this place got locked down and the government learned it cost in Canada at least $2,000 every 2 weeks to acquire a new customer. And the logic behind doing this, you're going to learn it today. Trust me, you're going to want to hear this, okay? Let Warren Buffett start this off.
The worst day on Wall Street since the crash of 1987.
The Dow traders are standing there watching in amazement, and I don't blame them.
We're now down 43%.
Almost everything there completely wiped out. And the NASDAQ, everything and more has been completely wiped out.
Let's talk about the speed with which we are watching this market deteriorate.
Let's do that then. Can we get you to speak a little to Aaron?
Yeah, 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion. You can imagine the American economy is an economic train moving down a track that has no ending. And it picks up cargo and passengers as we go along. There's 330 million of us now, and there were only 4 million in 1790. And our farms are incredibly more productive, and we have 75 million houses, and we had a few huts then, and we have great universities and all of these things. So we're just constantly moving more and more cargo and passengers along. And occasionally, that train is going to get derailed. In 2008, you had something close to a bubble in home real estate. 50 million people had mortgages, roughly at that time, out of 75 million homeowners. When that bubble burst, it hit home to probably 40% of the households in the country, these people that had mortgages on their houses. And fear spread in the month of September 2008 at a rate that was like a tsunami.
Who do you hold responsible for that?
Bubbles are always hard to ascertain. The originators of it. There really aren't any originators. Everybody got caught in. Some were foolish, some were crooked, some were both. But you had a mass illusion that it could go on forever. You had Wall Street firms participating, you had mortgage originators participating, but you had the public participating. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was like going to Cinderella, going to the party. I mean, it was all going to turn to mice and pumpkins at midnight, but nobody wanted to leave until 1 minute to midnight, and the rush for the door was couldn't be handled.
What for you were the lessons you learned from 2008?
I didn't really learn any new lessons in 2008 or 9. I had emphasized to me some of the things that I'd always believed, that you do need somebody who can say, well, do whatever it takes. The U.S. government had to do the right things, not perfect things, but generally the right things, starting in September, and they did a fantastic job, actually, of getting the train back on the tracks. There was still damage for a long period thereafter, but it was really important to have fast action at that time. And we were very fortunate we had the leaders we did. If we'd had people who waited for all the information to be right, or for committees to work, or that sort of thing, it would have been far, far worse. People talk about a fog of war, but there's a fog of panic too. And during that panic, you're getting inaccurate information, you're hearing rumors. If you wait till you know everything, it's too late. People today, 10 years later, they're still affected by the crisis, various people in different ways, but they're not as affected as they were in 2009 or 2010.
Has that confidence come back?
Yeah, but it comes back slowly. I can understand why people that lost their houses or lost their jobs or whatever may have happened to them feel that there must be somebody out there that was profiting from this, that did it doing some things that should send them to jail. The people that ran most of the institutions, the big institutions, they got in trouble. I mean, I probably shouldn't name names, but they went away rich. They may have been disgraced to some degree, but they went away rich. So I don't think the incentive system has been improved a lot from what it was 10 years ago. If I knew what the next crisis would look like, it might be a little bit helpful in stopping it. But there will be other crises. There's no way of knowing when you're in a situation like we were in the fall of 2008 or 9, when or precisely how it will end. You know the United States will come back. The factories don't disappear, the farmland doesn't disappear, the skills of the people don't disappear. But you had a system which was going to put them all in an idle position, or could do it, and there's no way of knowing how far it was going to go. What's left from the crisis is pretty much our memories. I mean, the tracks are still there, the train's still there, but we had a big interruption in 2008 and 9, and now the train has been running pretty darn well, and we've shown that America can't be stopped.
And America can't be stopped, right? I would beg to differ. I believe right now we are in the midst of this crash, this epic collapse of the U.S. system itself, and Trump is derailing this train here for the one last time, and then out from that system comes this new system, or this system that they've been operating it on at the BCBS, the Banking Committee for Banking Supervision, BCBS, says, these are their words, okay? I'm going to read you an excerpt from a book I'm working on right now. It says, so circa 2020, during this Carney interview, Mark Carney, this was the pandemic era, financial stress test. Everything was chaos on the surface, but central banks, including the Bank of England, the Bank of Canada, and the Federal Reserve, were coordinating emergency policy tools. Carney, still close to the levers of power, made two strategic moves. He removed the counter-cyclical buffers, unlocking capital for lending, and stated this would give 3 years of lending runway at this point here. So essentially what he's saying there, we're moving into a Basel area and post-Basel implementation, okay? So what a Basel area is, Basel III, to be more precise. Basel III, people just believe it's for banks have to hold gold. It doesn't just have to be gold. It's cash equivalents, government bonds. There has to be a reserve of sorts, a buffer. And the reason they have these buffers, these central bankers, the reason they have these buffers is it allows them to lend more. And the reason you want to lend more, because you become the lender of last resort. If there is no other money out there in the ecosystem but this money, this government stimulus for you to be on, and that comes to you at a digital form, you will take it. May 7th, the Real ID Act in US comes into play. Let me continue, okay? Described current conditions as a bear trap. The current conditions back then were a bear trap. This is during the 2008-2009 almost collapse at this point, the great financial crisis. That's what he's talking about. So at this point, Basel III was already being phased in, but many of the reforms had been delayed post-2008. Carney used that window to strategically stretch capital flexibility. That flexibility of cash, they call that elasticity of money. It can grow and shrink and grow and shrink. That the elasticity of money to be able to move and flow with the economy itself. Money is not the economy. The economy is the lifeblood of this society. Money is it correlates with the economy, for lack of a better term. So Carney used that window to strategically stretch capital flexibility so that liquidity constraints wouldn't trigger panic, but would ensure compliance. 2012. So let me let you hear what this man has to say now. So now, you heard Warren Buffett's take on it. You heard me read what Mark Carney said. Now listen to what he has to say. This is his take on it now, going through these things, okay? Listen to this.
But the fiscal thing, and then I'll answer the politics question because it's an important question. The fiscal, I absolutely agree. And I think I'll supplement it in the sense that greater role for fiscal, first point. Second is that I said that we have room on the conventional policy with there's other things we can do, and we have this complementary thing of the countercyclical buffer and a few other things we can do. But you certainly can paint scenarios globally and then in the UK where that may not be enough. And certainly you can paint scenarios where you want to do some of that, but you absolutely want it complemented by fiscal policy. We are globally, and I think you've said this, but I'll say it from my perspective, we're pretty close to a global liquidity trap. Textbook, what do you do in a liquidity trap? Well, fiscal policy gives you traction in the liquidity trap. Now, if you're a central bank, what you don't do is if you have room, you don't say, well, I'm just going to hang on to that room and not do my job. Broad brush without talking about any particular country, that is the case. That is the case globally. And some of the solutions, if we could pull off some of that entrenched uncertainty, that would start to move us back out of it. But that's not going to happen overnight. On the political side, two things. One, know Chair Powell well, as does Larry. He would never, and has never, and never will make a decision because of political pressure. He'll make a decision because he thinks it's the right decision to make, and I have full confidence that that's the case with the rest of the FOMC.
So just so you understand what he's saying, that they will follow their policy first. If there's policy and there's rules and there's regulations, they will follow that. Their mandate as a central banker is to the central bank and to the money and to the economy, right? These are the... When I say economy, I mean like how money influences the economy and how it leads the economy itself. Because again, they're separate, but they correlate, and one intertwines with the next though. And that's essentially what he's saying there. They will follow that first. They will follow their rules first. They will follow their SOPs, standard operating procedures. This is a business. This is a system. These people have chosen to go to school to learn, understand it, and be a part of this system from that high level. That's what he's talking about here. They will follow that code first. There are some who do, as Warren Buffett was saying, there are some people who do some really bad things though and end up in jail, end up in wherever, do some really shitty things, right? But this man right here, he's a gangster. I don't like him, I don't dislike him, I just listen to him because he's definitely a person of interest, right? I keep no bias about it, absolutely no bias. I'm not left, I'm not right, I'm not nothing. No flags, no colors, no affiliations. I walk a thin line by myself because it's easy. It's easy. I don't listen to you, I don't listen to you. Because if I'm going this way here and something pulls me that way there, I'm following a narrative now. I will just take in information that I hear and begin to put the pictures together myself. Let's continue.
The second thing, though, I'll just tell you a very quick story. In Canada, the thing about when you're a central banker on political pressure on whether or not you should move or do whatever, right?
So just to give you context, Mark Carney was the governor at the Bank of Canada back in 2008 to 2012, I think it was. And then from 2013 to 2020, he was the bank governor, the BOE, the Bank of England. And now since Trudeau had resigned and stepped down, Mark Carney is now the acting prime minister. And the reason he's the acting prime minister, right, not because he has political experience, well, he does clearly, but he's a central banker. He wants to oversee the rollout of the Canadian payment system, as I was showing you guys last video I had made. He is the central bank. He is the money. He's one of those people that are the money. So he's overseeing how the government begins to roll out this stimulus. He is the, he's the experienced one in the group there. That's who he is. So he's helping now with the next phase. The central banker comes down to the lower level here where the government is and says, this is how I want you to issue this. This is how I want you to do this. I'm going to come and monitor. I have my stakeholder account, my stake account holder, whatever. I have them all in position here. This is how you need to execute. Let's go. I wasn't going to show these videos at first, no word of a lie, because this guy's stuff is so gangster. Man. Oh man, yeah, it's like the things he says. There's even a part in this segment here at the Institute of Harvard, where Harvard Kennedy School, where he says, you know what? Somebody asks him something, and he says, I shouldn't say this. Can you take this from the record here? And he goes into talking about and you're just sitting there like, this is not real, not real. Anyways, let's go.
You're a central bank, you're a lousy politician. That kind of comes with the territory, that's why you're a central banker, right? In Canada, 11 years plus 2 weeks ago, there was a federal election. The government was running on a platform of everything's all right. In these short elections, it's hard to pivot, I guess, their platform. So they kept saying everything was all right, even though everything was clearly not all right globally. And there was, I don't know if you remember, there was a coordinated interest rate cut, ourselves, the Fed, Bank of England, and the ECB, and we agreed on that. And
remember, I just told you that those three had agreed. They collaborated on that. The BOE, the BOC, and the Fed Reserve. And this is where Mark Carney starts talking about that. Let's do this.
I thought, as the governor of the Bank of Canada, this is a real political problem. It's the right thing to do. We got to do it because we got to get to this equivalent of G7 meetings, IMF meetings, to figure out what to do for the system. But it's going to undercut the government. But it's the right thing to do. And if I don't do it because I'm worried about undercutting the government, then I'm being political, so we did it. And I told the finance minister at 9 o'clock at night, before it was announced at 7 a.m., and he was very professional and took it. And government goes up in the polls because, people are taking action. People confuse the central bank and the government. It just hammered home for me, like, don't think through the poll. Think, what is the right answer? Sometimes you're going to get it wrong, obviously, although I don't think we got it wrong after the referendum. But as soon as you start putting politics into your reaction function, you're gonna make mistakes, and that's, the Fed is absolutely doing what they, in my view, they're doing what they think is right, and since we're in the world's tightest mutual admiration society, they're getting it right. The last question on climate policies, which is a huge question, It's one of those areas like productivity where it's a broad suite of policies, which implied in here. The most challenging one, of course, is having some form of carbon tax and having it, or price on pollution, and having it designed so it is transparently returned to individuals, and maybe even over-returned to individuals, so that it's clear that the guy driving the truck in Youngstown is getting it back, and that is hard to do. It's necessary, though, to do ultimately. I mean, I'm not going to be able to candidly do it all justice in this, but you do need a price on pollution, I think, in the end. It has to go back to individual. It has to be a relative price as opposed to a new form of revenue raising.
So we had learned about the great financial crisis, what that was like. For some of you guys who might be too young to have lived through it, I don't know. And now we're going to step into the COVID crisis, okay? 2020 to 2022, controlled crisis and liquidity engineering. In this phase, central banks unleashed massive fiscal stimulus, but only through controlled channels. The public was flooded with free money. Like I said before, they knew how much it took to acquire new customers. $2,000 a week, every 2 weeks for Canadians. That's how much it was. But under that was a growing framework for programmable financial infrastructure. Digital ID pilots were taking place, stablecoin discussions, and then beginning forms of the Genius Act as it was going back and forth in the Senate within the US. So what Carney predicted happened. They used the lending buffer that they had created to smooth over shocks and build. This was the quiet area from 2023 to 2024 for you guys who remember. A lot of people tuned out after the pandemic and inflation. But this is when the real infrastructure locked in. Y'all remember when Brad Garlinghouse had come out with his picture and he's like, lock in. Early 2025, I believe that's when that picture came out. But we're going back 2023, 2024. So, ISO 2002 begins to roll out and go live. November is when it went with SWIFT. CBDC pilots moved to their, well, not SWIFT, sorry, with the other banking financial institutions. They began to go live with theirs in preparing for the shift before the live US goes with FedWire and then globally with SWIFT at that point. This was the quiet build area. A lot of people tuned out of the pandemic and inflation, but this is when the real infrastructure locked in. ISO 2002 goes live. CBDC pilots move to wholesale and retail staging. For example, the ECNY. They had done trials of that at the Olympic, I believe, 2022, if I'm not correct. So the Hong Kong Monetary Authority and the European Central Bank, there were trials. There was DLT-based trade finance system expanding, like Project Enbridge. Stellar's integration. RippleNets begins to scale out. Basel III, the endgame, finalized with full implementation targeted for January 1st, 2026. That is your reset date. And the reason that's your reset date, that's when these two worlds, boom, split. The old economy and the new economy, or the old money and the new money split at that point. Because banks now need to begin to hold a stockpile of reserves. For those reserves to happen, as we've heard it explained already now, that's what's going to cause a lot of fear in the economy. That's what's going to cause the bank to tighten policy and bring that money back into them. We're in a liquidity trap right now, as Mark Carney had stated. We are in a liquidity trap. In 2020, real estate began to go up. Why did the price of real estate begin to go up? Because the interest rates in the economy from the central banks began to go down. And as those were going down now, it was easier for people, retail people, mass amounts of people, quantities of people who either owned homes or didn't own homes, but now became a homeowner. And if you owned a home, you were there renovating and fixing your house up, which continuously increased the value of your property as well. And as an investor, a real estate investor, that's the strategy right there. Buy, renovate, refinance, repeat. That's the strategy right there. All day, day in, day out. But now Canada and US are tapped out. They are tapped out. In Canada, every 5 years, we have to go back to our bank. If you're with a bank, a traditional financial institution, you have to go back every 5 years on average. You can choose the term of which you want to stay, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. But the vary depending on how long out you are if you're going to do a fixed. If you're doing variable is really good when interest rates are low. Variable is not so great if you're doing the long-term hold. Not so good when inflation begins to creep up like this. Because again, people were locked down at this point because of COVID. The economy slowed down. Things came to a halt. Supply chain broke down. The value and prices of things just began to go up at that point. Just a Nike swoosh. Swoosh, mother. So, with that imbalance in the markets now, and with that taking place now, people were at home. People stayed at home. And I remember one of the things that the government had said, because again, I came from aviation. One of the things the government had said, if you want to apply for this CERB, COVID Emergency Relief Benefit, I believe that's what the name stands for, all you gotta do is, I have RBC Bank. They're like, here's the link, connect your RBC Bank to this government COVID, benefits. That easy, and they just put the money right into your account. No problem. They knew how much it cost to acquire people. They had buffers for 3 years at this point. They knew they had the information they needed. And now as this collapse in this world happens, Q1 is for stable coins within the US right now. The East is ready to go. The East is ready to go. And they have their timelines. And they're following the Bank for International Settlements timeline. That's what's going on here, okay? They're following that timeline. And the Basel Committee for Banking Supervision, they're following this timeline. When they choose to implement it, the East is going on their timeline. The West is like running through it right now, right? So if you blink, you missed it. If you blink, you missed it. Things are moving too fast, so it's good to be ahead and have an understanding of what's going on. Q1 is stable coins. Q2 is market structure. Q3 is implementation and testing now within SWIFT, getting ready to go live. Q4, boom. SWIFT is live with cross-border payments with ISO 20022 interoperability. ISO standard 15022 for the old way of doing things for certain empty messages. Done. It's proceeded now with ISO 20022. At that point, you do not touch that standard anymore. That is not the standard you touch. When coexistence ends, you don't touch that unless there's certain provisions within that states that you can use certain coding still. So when that happens, here is what we're moving to, and here's how we get there. Listen to this.
Actually use CBDC, and I've said this in many fora that I think the focus at the moment is only about the adverse case of wrong way risk, where there's a crisis and everyone flees into CBDC. And thinking about that scenario is completely legitimate and necessary from a financial stability perspective. But from a usability perspective and an adaptability perspective, I'm very happy that the ECB is also thinking about the normal case, i.e., what happens in normal times, and how do we actually get people to use a potential CBDC offering if and when it comes. And for that, I think it's absolutely necessary that the central banks also think about the interface to the client, where it's not a foregone conclusion to me that central banks are the best able to provide convenience and innovative power of connectivity to retail clients. So I think the challenge will be for the central banks to find the right place for handing off the CBDCs into distribution networks, into innovation networks that then build around a core of central bank currency. And that's absolute daily business in all other areas where there's always a handover point between the central bank activity and the private sector activity. So I think that delineation will be specified more in this case. The other element that I want to mention,
that's the handover we're waiting for, when the central banks now have to hold that capital reserve. Boom! That is your great reset. That is your great reset at this point. All right?
is, and we've said that many times as German government, we don't think that the limitation to retail CBDC is appropriate, and we also don't agree that we through.
So for the U.S., they don't want a retail CBDC, right? They do not want a retail CBDC. I've said before, there are differences. There are wholesale CBDCs for the back end. There are retail CBDCs, and then there are synthetic CBDCs. And the US will have a synthetic CBDC arrangement based off of the Project Hamilton. Their Project Cedar, I believe it is. This is based off of a hybrid CBDC style. And a CBDC is not money, okay? I want you guys to recognize that it's not money. A CBDC is the platform, the digital rails. If it goes from my phone to your phone, how does it get there? If it goes from the, like, what are the regulations behind that for those rails to exist? Because within those rails, that's where the stable coins exist now. They're doing what they're doing, going from my phone to said person's phone. On a wholesale side point of view, that's how that's working. On the retail side of view, point of view, they're having not a retail CBDC. So when you hear the US say no CBDCs within the US, within that provision, that is talking about retail CBDC, no retail CBDC. I would highly advise that you read that and understand it. And Ripple offers, and Stellar does as well, hybrid CBDC or synthetic CBDC. The stablecoin issuer would then utilize those rails, the Stellar XLM, and those stablecoin reserves are held in a central bank or a central bank-like entities. Circle's reserves are held with BlackRock, and I believe they have some at the Fed. So that stablecoin is a lot like central bank money. It's not central bank money, but it's central bank custodies at that point. That's what that is. That's a synthetic CBDC. Ripple is working with the Fed. They flat out say that, right? James Wallace flat out says that. The US has a wholesale CBDC. That's what FedNow is, all right? So there's no CBDC in the US. People are missing it. FedNow is a CBDC. It's a central bank digital rails is what it is, not a currency. It's a digital rails. That's what the wholesale CBDC is. And we've seen the retail CBDC in the setup out in Ukraine. For Circle to be able to get money out into Ukraine itself, they use Stellar rails under the guise of the UNHRC. That's what it is. The UNHRC humanitarian program for displaced people out in Ukraine who are asylum seekers at this point. They were able to download an app called DIA, and through the Central National Bank of Ukraine and the retail bank of the Tascom Bank, with the technology company of Bit Inc. and Stellar Rails, I don't know, and then the DIA platform itself, that was the arrangement that they had created into this package for this US currency under a synthetic CBDC to be utilized and accepted out in Ukraine. All right, I hope that makes sense. It's not always easy to understand or easy to create it. So with that being said, CBDCs are coming out. For CBDCs to come out, we have to have another Dodd-Frank moment. And a Dodd-Frank moment means we're shifting from the old rails to the new rails, because the new rails had come into play in Dodd-Frank. Let me show you guys here. Hold on a second. Let me get a better understanding. So as we go to another financial crisis, okay? Back to the 2008 one. The Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, commonly known as Dodd-Frank, was the United States federal law enacted in 2010 to overhaul the financial regulation in the wake of 2008 and 2007-2008 financial crisis, aiming to improve financial stability, protect consumers, and prevent future crises. Every time a crisis happens, there has to be a framework in place. Say, this is how we're going to get out of that. They're not rushing around in the back saying, oh my God, what are we going to... No. They know this is coming up already. They've created Basel III to be able to hold capital reserves. Regulations had changed to allow banks to stop doing fractional reserves and now require them to hold actual reserves. Like back when I was a child and you would go to the bank, there were vaults back in the bank that the bank would use. They would keep like Rolexes back there, diamonds back there, gold bars back there, watches back there, cash back there, things of value. They ain't got that stuff no more, right? Banks get money, and by the time you get it out of your hand and into that bank, they've already lent out 90%. 90% of that stuff is gone immediately. Banks get paid to lend, and they fractionally reserve it. They don't hold 1-to-1. It's gone. It's gone. It's gone. It's gone. So, in 2000, hold on a second. Let me see if I can pull this up too. So, in 2000 and what is this? What are you? 2018. 2018, May 24, 2018. Trump signs bipartisan bill rolling back some Dodd-Frank bank regulations. So we were learning about Dodd-Frank, and now what we're looking at right now is a Mar-a-Lago Accord. And this is an era of the new dollar. Q1 was stable coins. Q2 was market infrastructure or market structure within the U.S. That market structure means DeFi, how stablecoins interact with DeFi, how DeFi interacts with banks, how banks interact with the digital world. The regulations are laid. They're coming out now. All we're doing is waiting for regulation unlock at this point. Unlock. And with each unlock, you're going to see the market responding. It's like, holy shit. It is big, it's bad, and the market's unwinding itself with all these new unlocks to that Basel III day. And you better believe it's going to get bad, because we're sitting in a bull trap. Poof, and it's going to shoot up again. It's going to shoot up again and get really bad. Hyperinflate. That's what we're going to see, is a hyperinflation. I've never lived through that in my life before, but I recognize it though, and I'm definitely de-risking certain assets of mine. Excuse me. So there has been much focus on whether Trump could force the U.S. trading partners into a so-called Mar-a-Lago Accord to weaken the dollar. Chief strategist Lars Muland reflects on what such a deal could entail. So the phrase Mar-a-Lago Accord was coined by U.S. money market wizard and previous Credit Suisse strategist Zoltan Pozsar back in 2024 on an idea that the U.S. could force countries to accept a weaker dollar and lower interest rates on their U.S. Treasury investments in order to still be protected by the U.S. security umbrella. The phrase is a spin-off of the 1985 Plaza Accord, where France, Japan, West Germany, and the UK agreed with the US to jointly weaken the dollar, replacing the Plaza Hotel in New York, which Trump owned from 1988 to 1995, with Trump's Mar-a-Lago Club in Palm Beach. Florida is the venue of a potential New Deal. Seems fitting and makes for a catchy phrase. So the idea was picked up by then Hudson Capital strategist. Does it matter? Does it matter? In Trump's opinion, okay. So here's why they're looking at that. Okay, I'll show you guys here. I posted here, I'm gonna say a year ago now. Only 162 people watched this. The Dodd-Frank is coming this year. This year, stablecoin is out. We are living in 1775 right now, and Trump is acting like George Washington in 1776. The Independence Day, which happens next year, July 4th, 2024, is Independence Day, the signing of the Declaration for Independence. That's when the first U.S. dollar came out, and that's when the first U.S. bank were brought into the reality, okay? So we're in the war part of that. And that war popped off April 19th, 1775. Right? Back to the future, folks. Back to the future. Trump is the person who's back, and he's living in bringing us to the future. That's what's going on. So listen to this lady here, Mrs. Velasquez, and she's going to break it down for y'all.
banks are exempted from this proposal, correct?
That's correct. Community banks are exempt from this proposal.
That's Michael S. Barr. He used to be at the Federal Reserve. He had stepped down from the Federal Reserve and joined the hearings here at the Senate, and then he became, what was it? He was getting sued by Trump. I don't remember what the reason was. Then he joined the Board of Governors within the Federal Reserve, and he just recently stepped down. By January 31st, 2026, they're going to have a new board governor replace this guy who's just, it's an empty seat right now. So it'll be very interesting to find out who this new governor is and what they're going to do. It's going to accelerate so fast, like you would not believe. So fast. Oh my God.
It only covers the top 37 banks in the country.
Thank you. Chair Grunberg, when you and I and your colleagues appeared before this committee in May, you stated that it was realistic to believe a notice of proposed rulemaking on Section 956 of Dodd-Frank will be released by the end of the year. Is that still your expectation?
Congressman, I don't know if we're going to be able to act by the end of this year. I will tell you that, this is a joint rulemaking involving 6 agencies. It has had intense principal level attention of all 6 agencies. I think we are in general alignment, and I think we're going to move toward a reproposed rule. It may not come till the early part of next year to get everybody.
Isn't that been the case for the last 12 years?
Yes, no, I understand. Believe me. Believe me.
As I have said it to each of you before, the statute requires a completed rulemaking within 9 months, and it has been 12 years. And just so you are all aware, I will continue asking for updates on this at every future hearing until the rule is written. It is well past time you get this done.
Yep, it's coming out 2025, the Mar-a-Lago Accord. Mar-a-Lago Accord. That's what that is. So I found the video I was looking for. I'm going to end off here shortly. When I say end off, I don't mean like end the video. I just mean I'm going to end off there or end there. This was Tedros from the world. He's from the World Health Organization. This was from the Government Summer 2024. Government Summit of 2024.
History teaches us that the next pandemic is a matter of when, not if. It may be caused by an influenza virus or a new coronavirus, or it may be caused by a new pathogen we don't even know about yet, or what we call disease X. There has been a lot of attention on disease X, especially recently. But in fact, it's not a new thing. We first used the term disease X in 2018. It was just the same time I spoke here in this government summit in 2018. And we used disease X as a placeholder for a disease we don't even know about yet, but for which we can nonetheless prepare. COVID-19 was a disease X, a new pathogen causing a new disease. But there will be another disease X, or a disease Y, or a disease Z. And as things stand, the world remains unprepared for the next disease X and the next pandemic.
How coincidental is that, huh? We're not prepared for that. You're damn right we're not.
Since we have...
Damn right we're not. People have not learned anything. What is this? Nuclear, Ukraine, Trump, globalization. Sounds interesting. But, here. So we know there's a new disease coming in. I had shown you guys videos quite several times. This one individual talking about interleukin-4. This is a mousepox disease that had come out in Australia. They tapped into this disease to stop infertility. But now we're going to be going over how to rig an election. So now we have the WHO. You know how they were looking at gain of function to increase the functionality or change the function of particular viruses to do other things, to enhance itself. Increased transmissibility. That's the word I'm looking for.
Miller, I'm a professor of computer science at Georgia Tech. It looks like he has a USB connection into the scanner.
The serial console in the back gives us a root shell.
That means you have control of the machine.
Have full control of that, and then we can change the results of what it's scanning. My computer is connected to the machine. This is a serial cable, and it's connected to the back of the machine. You take off the back of the machine, and there's a serial port, and that gives us full root access with no password.
There's no security subsystem on this thing.
Nope, there's no password on it. With this kind of access, you could rewrite the code that's running on there and get it to count votes in whatever way you wanted. You would do this in advance of election night and then wait for the results to come in.
You could control the election results.
Either way, as long as I had physical access to either plug something in or take off the back and plug something in there.
But you just need that access briefly.
Once, yes, very briefly.
About how long?
If you had this all prepped and ready to go, a minute.
This is easily possible for somebody to get into these machines because they're unsecured for such long periods of time. I have done research on and personally watched 150 elections at least. Two of our experts and I went to the closing of the polls in one of the recent elections. At the end of the closing of the polls, the poll workers left us there with about 6 voting machines by ourselves. I was with 2 guys who could have gotten into those machines in a matter of seconds and put in malware.
The machine we're in front of is a central count scanner. It's the ES&S Model 650. It's to our knowledge, the most widely deployed central count scanner in America. Anytime you do early voting or provisional voting, or anytime you're in a state where they do central tabulation of all the ballots, so they bring them to one place, this is the kind of high-speed scanner they would use to count ballots. Historically, these machines were examined, and they determined there was a number of serious problems with them by virtue of messing with the zip disk. You just turn it on for 3 minutes and stick a disk in, wait 1 minute, and then walk away. You're able to change the behavior of the machine any way you want, including changing the results of an election.
It's probably easier to do all of this by just plugging in a zip disk.
So this probably came from a server someplace.
I have no idea where they're getting their program.
We downloaded an image of the operating system, the software that runs on this machine, from a Russian server.
How many people might have access to stick in a zip disk like that?
It would be everyone from elections officials to people who run the storage facilities, volunteers in the election, security guards, you name it. There's going to be tens of thousands of people who have access to the machine in that fashion. And our adversaries definitely have this machine in Russia. Period.
There are so many possible hacks and so many possible vectors for entry. It's hard to believe that someone's not taking advantage of it.
So we know that they can rig elections. Really, really easy. We know that gain of function had been worked on for quite some time now. And we have COVID and this new disease XYZ, whatever you want to call it. We know that Mark Carney at the Bank of England had capital reserves at this point for 3-year buffer time to inject liquidity when needed to become the lender of last resort, which is buy now, pay later. And to the individuals who are older, such as myself, not old, older, I'm 42 years old, we known it as layaway or rain checks. That's what we would do. You would pay for it or begin to pay. You go to the store, say you wanted this item, I wanted this phone. I could begin to make payments. I don't own the phone yet. The phone's at the store. I have a contract with the store itself to purchase this phone, and I make payments for the store. I'm financing this product through the store. That's all it is. Buy now, pay later. Okay, so that's yours. You can, as retail people, you can still get your stuff. That's what's going to happen. People just want their stuff. They forget quickly. They forget easily. They just want to be able to afford stuff. Now, this guy here spells it out for us. All right, this gentleman right here. Where are we? Right here. Kyle Chase. Listen to what he has to say.
I want to lead you into talking about if CBDCs tomorrow morning, legislation of America, or here in Dubai, someone says, great, we're announcing the e-dirham, right? What does that look like in the first 90 days of it being implemented? Okay, I can go to pay government services for, my passport control or visa. That makes a lot of sense, ground level. about the candy store or the laundromat or, something like that? What does the first 90 days look like when a CBD gets announced?
So I want to speak, I want to respect the UAE here and just admit that I have no idea, very much how the government and regulations work here. I can only speak to where I grew up. Even though I haven't lived in America for 6 years, I'm very familiar with the way that monetary and fiscal policy work over there. And you have a very divisive and opinionated public over there. And you've got a lot of people who happily go along with the things that the government asks them to do. And then you have a lot of people who ask questions and wonder if this is really in their own best interest. Right now, I think it would be very unpopular to try to enter a CBDC into the American population. And they know that, right? And they know, and I don't think that...
And again, a CBDC is digital rails. Digital rails, okay? To implement a retail CBDC, the people would not like that. They would not go for that. We're America. Fuck yeah. Like, that's a terrible cliche. That's a terrible cliche. But they'll stand up and they'll defend themselves, essentially, where I'm going. The public will defend themselves against the government. Eventually, somebody would rise up and say, you know what, forget these, but I'm going to take them out myself. Guarantee you that would happen. And America knows this. So they have to be crafty with how they're implementing their products. Their retail synthetic CBDCs. It's a synthetic one. That's what it is. There's no other platform. There's wholesale, retail, and synthetic CBDC. They're operating under a synthetic CBDC structure. Okay.
I don't think that America has been watching China work on a CBDC for 5 or 6 years and doesn't have one in their back pocket ready to go. I think that they absolutely do. The question is, how are they going to implement it, right? And we know that the government, unfortunately in America, left the great vision of a very radical idea with very minimal government intervention and very much a pure democracy to a very controlling state where you saw that even more recently than ever with lockdowns. But in order for them to usher in a radical new idea, they need to create an environment to where the public is asking for it, right? And you have a very particular time in America happening right now where you have CPI or inflation increasing, still not under control. Interest rates are higher than ever. Bond markets are crashing. The highest stimulus injection into the economy ever outside of wartime and pandemic was just announced by the Biden administration, almost $1 trillion. We're inflating the monetary supply by over $1 trillion a year for the past 20-something years on average. So you have a very...
And if you think Trump isn't furthering this, think again, right? He is what's known as a wartime president. This man is spending money on the military like you wouldn't believe. And that's good for strengthening America. It shows America's strength. America's known for their military. It shows their strengths. It shows their posture, if you will. But think about how much money is being spent, though. Okay?
Very unsustainable system that's happening right now, that they cannot kick the can down the road much longer. People are starting to lose faith in the ability for the U.S. to pay back their debts. This is why the bond market is not doing so well. And people are going to look elsewhere to put their money. So how do you implement something like a CBDC, which gives much more control to the government over what you choose to do with your money? Things like if they need to stimulate the economy, they can make it so that your money expires if you don't use it after a certain period of time. Well, they need an event to happen where people are asking for it. So in my opinion, the way that the US CBDC gets introduced is eventually probably 2025, 2026, after you have the elections that come through and you have essentially what's looking like hyperinflation. Something has to break. We all know that something has to break. The Fed has said it many times in the past. And people like Ray Dalio and other people are calling for this, lots of data to back this up. So this looks like a 1930s, Great Depression type of event that happens. This will put everybody out of work. This will put everybody out of food, and people will be scared, right? People who have had safety and security, food and shelter will be scared for the first time in a long time and not knowing what to do, right? And then you will have whoever is in office and running at the time will come out with the solution, right? Everyone's really hungry, scared, out of work, doesn't have any money. And so the solution will be, hey,
the person who has the solution is Trump. Trump has partnered up with Elon. Elon is co-president right now. Elon has been given access to, let me show you this, okay? So here's the latest. As of yesterday, April the 2nd, 2025, Doge is hunting for cuts at the SEC. Doge is inside the US SEC, Securities Exchange Commission. Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency workers arrived at the SEC recently, aiming to streamline the regulatory agency beyond the hundreds of staffers that already have taken buyouts. An SEC email on Friday told staff to cooperate with the Doge team and granted necessary access to confidential data while keeping to the agency's ethical structures. The agency already has an adverse party to Musk. The SEC just voted to continue a lawsuit alleging Musk failed to disclose his accumulation of Twitter stock, as required under securities laws before he acquired the social media platform. That platform is now owned by XAI, which is an AI platform. It's Elon's AI platform. That platform owns X. We're living in crazy times, folk. So what is the SEC's software that Elon now has gained access to through Doge? It's known as EDGAR. EDGAR, which stands for Electronic Data Gathering, Analysis, and Retrieval, is the primary system used by the SEC for public companies to submit filings, and its database where the public can access these filings for free. So, let me just find that one. Is it this one? This one? This one? This one? One of them. Shoot. Oh, they're right beside each other. This. So accessing EDGAR for data. Anybody can use this. This is public. Whatever. All companies, foreign and domestic, are required to file registration statements, periodic reports, and other forms electronically through the US SEC EDGAR system. Anyone can access and download this information for free or query it through a variety of EDGAR public searches. So this is being onboarded into the Doge system, into Elon's system. The one that owns the largest social platform as well, X. All right. This reminds me of that movie, Don't Look Up. This is what it is, okay? Where was it? So data APIs using EDGAR to index files. Where was it? Back to 1990. There it is here. So how far back does EDGAR data go? EDGAR started in 1994 or 95. So paper copies for filing documents prior to 94 may be available by filing a FOIA Act. But other than that, 94, you now have data that this can go all the way back. It's now being uploaded into this new system within the new government, this umbrella corp, if you will, for a lack of better terms, like Resident Evil. That's the word I'm looking for. That's the name, Resident Evil. I'll show you Don't Look Up afterwards too. That's like the whole Trump and Elon and the government stuff going on as well. Different takes actually. It's the old Biden take and the new take right now actually. So the SEC adopts improvements to EDGAR system to enhance security, filer access, and account management. I want to get down to here. On September 30th, 2024, the SEC will open for filer testing and feedback, a beta software environment that will reflect the adopted rule and form amendments and the related technical changes. Information about signing up for beta testing and extensive additional information about the rule adoption and related technical changes can be found on the website. So at this point, they're beginning to beta test. Last year, September 2024. What's going on now? We're in April 2025. So compliance with amended Form ID is required on March 24th. And when did Elon say he wanted access now to this system? He's already in there. That's how these dates work. All rule and form amendments will be effective on the date, and filers will be required to comply with all rules and amended forms by September 15th, 2025.
we are modern, we're hip, we're cool, we use blockchain. It's not real blockchain, it's a centralized blockchain, but we use blockchain. And we have a way better monetary system. The guys of the past, they tried their best, it was a failed system. Now we're putting everything on blockchain, it's gonna be transparent, you guys can trust us, blah, blah, blah. And we know that you're hurting right now, we're sorry the economy sucks. All you have to do is download this app, scan your face, connect all your accounts, and we will instantly send you, $1,200 of stimulus so that you can go buy food and groceries and, pay your mortgage.
Or $5,000 under the Doge. Will Doge issue $5,000 checks to Americans? These are the stimulus checks, as Mark Carney, previous Governor of Bank of Canada, previous Governor of Bank of England, now the PM of Canada, had stated these central banks are holding capital reserves on hand. Through the Basel III, I connected that part, through the Basel III, it's capital requirements, because they will become the lender of last resort for you and me. I will not be on CBDCs. Unless I need to, then I can move money around. I will not be needing those. I can just trade directly in stablecoin, and I have other assets as well that help me out through this. I have a business plan, I got a game plan, I got exit strategies, and I use the word exit strategies because it's not one simple thing, it's many moving arms. And this is what this is why you need to partner up with groups and learn and tap into what they have, because it's not just about, when moon, when's the money, how's this going to look, oh my god, I'm rich, now what? You didn't plan anything. If you end up making some money off of this bull run here, good for you, I'm happy for you. Now what? Are you going to sell your assets off into a depreciating Lamborghini? Yeah, now what? You're poor again? You got the lottery syndrome going on? You're going to buy a house that you didn't even know how to afford, and now because you have money, you don't even see what the prices are. You just go and do stupid things and buy a big-ass house. Get your ass handed to you because you become a bag holder because you don't understand real estate cycles. Right? Don't do that. Don't be the bag holder. Do not be the bag holder.
Mortgage, pay your rents. And this has to happen. I already know right now that that it will not be openly accepted with open arms, but as we know, when the US had all of their privacy stripped away from them after 9/11, they made this huge bill about the Patriot Act and how it was going to be the anti-terrorist bill, but what they really did was sign away all of our rights to privacy, for them to wiretap our phones and look at all of our conversations. This would have never happened if you didn't have this big event happen prior that made everybody terrified of terrorists, And so these events happen in America. It's historically known. CIA leaks, this is not, I'm not wearing a conspiracy theory hat. I'm just being logical, in my opinion, anyway. So CBDC is something, and I hope that other governments and things like that do it in a way that is beneficial for the people. I don't think America's will be.
So, you're American, right?
Yes.
When it comes to moving our world, these individuals that created the system that you and I operate in and are born into and don't recognize it, these guys, to them it's the system. It is what they do. All right. So listen to what he says.
I would suggest the issue in terms of moving the system, if you will, the world, from where we are today to some form of stabilization at some degree level, which means getting ultimately to net zero carbon, right? Wherever you know this, everyone knows this, it's not just about divestment. It's not just about excluding. It's not just about, at least on this phase of the adjustment, renewables and windmills. It's actually, a lot of it is about moving from worst in class to best in class in terms.
This video is already over an hour, so I need to come wrap it up here. But listen to this gentleman here. This is the BCBS. This is finalizing Basel III. The BCBS is Basel Committee for Banking Supervision. These are the people that state what currency actually is. Right? These have members from the BIS, members from different central banks create this global forum think tank, this supervisory You know, we're only putting out recommendations that I recommend you follow, because if not, then you're not adhering to the recommended regular rules, essentially. Okay, listen to this. Listen to this, okay?
Hello, Fiona Maxwell from Politico. A question for all of you. Do you think banks are now crisis-proof?
I'm sorry, do you think what?
A bank's crisis-proof.
I think the answer to this is that, at least my answer to that is that nothing is crisis-proof. What we should aim at is to increase the resilience of the system that we supervise, and that is the main aim. But where the next crisis will come from, we certainly can't foresee. But now we can clearly see that the present system is much more resilient than the one we used to be having before the crisis. Stefan?
No, I agree. I agree with that. The system will be stronger compared to the system that we had. Well, on the other hand, it's hard to foresee what will happen in the future. Yeah. So, and that holds for many phenomena that we deal with in society. So my belief is that we're in better shape and will be in better shape once this is implemented. But at the same time, it's impossible to know what the future has in store.
Mic drop right there. They like the new system that they're using right now. It's better than the old one. They're where they need to be. Remember, it's a system that they call it. It's a system. As Mark Carney said, it's the system of the world. These are the people, the head people. I go right to the horse's mouth to hear what they have to say and allow them to break down the story for us. Right? They say exactly what it is that's going to happen. And you know this is the new system that we're moving into. You know who the infrastructure players are. We got XRP, wholesale, XLM, retail. We got HBAR, which is enterprise, Casper, which is enterprise. You got Cosmos, which acts as the hub, connecting for the hub and spokes, connecting, utilizes bridges for these blockchains. We have Axelar as a messaging system. We have Polkadot as a contractual company. We have smart contracts and contracts through Cardano. You have an entire working ecosystem. You have Velo out in the Southeast Asia. You got Stronghold acting for the ACH wires, which is governed by, as the DTCC passes off to Nacha. Nacha is the governing body of the ACH wires, which taps into Stronghold. Like, this whole ecosystem is being built. It's already, my apologies, it's not being built. It's already built. They piloted these things. They have done proof of concepts in the early days, then piloted it, played around with them in the sandboxes, and now they're like, you know what? Let's go. Let's get the regulations on these bad boys here. That's what it's about. Hope you guys found value in this one. I'll see you on the next one.
We making moves. We making major moves. We making moves.